Welcome to Beetlegust 2024. And if you're new to my channel and you've never heard the term Beetlegust before, that means I'm going to be making videos over my Beetlejuice project all August long. And I have a feeling this is going to be Beetlegust-tember because I'm pretty sure this project's going to take me a couple months. The project for this year is Juno's office. I really love doing netherworld scenes during Beetlegust. It's it's fairly close to October, and the netherworld scenes are just like the epitome of the Halloween vibe that I love. I will talk about Juno's office a little later in the video, but first I am going to be doing a Beetlejuice project wrap-up. I have had this requested by a few people asking to just have an overview of what I've done so far. And I do think I'm maybe halfway through the project, if not about 40-45% through the project. You can let me know how far along you think I am in the comments down below after you see the overview. Currently, there are 45 videos in my Beetlejuice project playlist, so that is a lot to go through if you are new here. So let me tell you what I've done so far. This is how the Beetlejuice house currently looks all put together. We'll start from the top and go down. Construction on the second floor started with this steep, narrow staircase that eventually will go up to the attic. It was going to be hard to reach later on, so that's where I needed to begin. I also created the Beetlejuice bathroom, or the indoor outhouse. You never see how it finally looks in the movie after it's renovated, so I made my best guess. It even has a reference to the indoor outhouse comment. Most recently, I worked on Lydia's bedroom, which is very purple and a lot brighter with the amount of colors that are in here. This is the only bedroom that I have completed on this floor. I will still need to create Charles and Delia's room and Charles' study. So the walls on the second floor are not quite done. Many people have asked how I plan to get this huge project out of my studio once it's done. The trick is that it's built like a layer cake. Here you can see the second floor layer, which is not quite done. It comes off in one piece, and then underneath that there is a layer that is the ceiling for the first floor. It comes off on its own, so I have easy access to each room. The first floor is the most complete, including the dining room, which is the first room that I worked on. Right next to that is the kitchen, which is Delia's kitchen. All of these rooms you do get a fairly good view at, so I knew better what I needed to make in these spaces. To finish up the first floor, I needed to create the living room and the entryway with a snakeskin staircase, which is of course a reference to Beetlejuice when he takes over the staircase railing. The first floor is pretty much complete except for one doorway in the kitchen and all the lighting that I need to add in and put into the central lighting system. Just like the second floor, the first floor comes off as one layer and then it reveals the base. I really didn't think about the base when I first started this project, but I realized it was very necessary to get this house sitting up on the hill like it's supposed to. Later on in the project, this hill will be covered with grass and it will contain a grave for Beetlejuice. I hope to make Beetlejuice headstone. It also has the garage, which will house all the extra houses that I don't end up using on the diorama that goes in the attic. I still have a few more things I want to create for the garage area, so I still can't call this complete, but it's good enough to hold up the house for now. And I started to run out of places I could put these layers, so I rearranged a few things and we'll keep going with the last layer, which is the base. The base is made out of plywood. It was made by a friend of mine. I wanted it to be incredibly strong to hold all of the netherworld. The first area of the netherworld that it holds is the waiting room, which is of course a very iconic scene in the movie. It had to be perfect. The netherworld scenes all have lighting so far. By the end of this project, I will have 4 total scenes in the base. At the moment, there are only 2 that are complete. One of them is the waiting room that you're seeing right now, and I have completed the dolls for this area as well. And the other area that is complete is the hallway. This is the hallway that the Maitlands walk down as they're trying to figure out where they need to go in the netherworld to get help. And we do have a spooky guest peeking through one of the windows. This hallway also contained a door that looked like a jail cell, so I decided to add a sandworm in this area. There will be another area in the base that has more sandworms, but I just couldn't help myself with this opportunity. And as you can see, there is one little section that houses the lighting, and that is going to be my hub for all of the wires to control the entire project. Here's a better look at the lighting. It's just a small cubby, but it goes all the way through the center of the base and connects to each area. This space will be Saturn with the worms, and this is the space we're working in today, which is going to be Juno's office. That is my wrap up of everything that has been done so far on this project, and if you want to know what else is left, this is currently where I'm at. I have built up to the second floor, so I still have the entire third floor, which is going to be the attic space where the Diorama and the Maitlands hang out, and then there's even one more space which is the top of the tower. And I don't know what I'm going to be doing with that area yet, but this project is still getting bigger and bigger. And of course, I've got to show you a wrap up of all the dolls I have made so far. This is the first time I had seen them all together. This is quite a collection, and for Beetlegust this year, we will be adding 4 more dolls. When I started this, I did not realize how many characters I was going to need to create. That is where the Beetlejuice project stands at this moment. However, at the end of Beetlegust, I hope to have one more space in the Netherworld base piece complete. And as promised, I'm going to go ahead and talk about Juno's office. Juno is the Maitland's caseworker in the Netherworld after they pass away. We do see the Maitlands go into her office, which at first glance is just a basic office.
You two, come in here. Sit down. Get in here, both of you.
It has a desk, chairs, maybe some filing cabinets, paper, but this room is much more complicated than you may think at first. Juno's office has several large windows that open up into other parts of the Netherworld, which is one thing that makes this such an interesting scene. There's a window that opens up into like the office mail room space. And then there's another window that opens up into some kind of stadium seating that seems to have a lot of other people waiting. This space is further complicated because I need to add a speaker in here somewhere. My ultimate goal is to have this project be able to play its own theme music and have the lights that we are installing dance along with the music, kind of like one of those Halloween or Christmas houses that are just really fun to watch. So I'm having to keep all of that in mind as I'm planning this one single tiny office space. The rest of this video is going to show you my planning process so you can follow along with my thoughts on how I'm even starting this. I'm also going to be purchasing the bodies for the dolls that I'm going to be creating. Obviously, we need to make Juno, but she also has what I'm going to call some football friends who are very, very confused.
Coach, where's the men's room?
Yeah.
I'm not your coach.
I'm going to be making 3 football players, and I think that's going to be so fun. I'm actually really excited about the football players. And I'm not really even a sports person. I just think they're going to be fun to make. So as you can see, there's a lot going on. Let's go ahead and jump into the planning. I'm going to show you the space that we have to use for Juno's office. I did have to do some pre-planning to make sure I had everything in order before this project even started. I will go over my plan with you, but all I did was tape together some paper into the base so I had a perfect duplication of the floor plan, and then I sketched with a pencil on top of it. I used the desk and chair that I made for Charles to make sure I had enough room for the supplies I need for Juno's office, and then I took 2 other chairs from the Netherworld to make sure I had the 2 chairs that you see Barbara and Adam sit in. The first things I'm going to mark in permanently are the columns. In blue, I'm going to be writing in all of the permanent features or features that are structural. At first I had 4 columns, but I do decide to add a 5th one later on. I also am going to be creating faux walls that are going to make it look like Juno's office is much smaller than the space that's available. I need to create the exterior views. So there's going to be some things that are outside of the windows that are in the walls that I create. Only 2 of the windows are going to have a clear view where you can look through them. The other ones are going to have drapes in front of them, and they're going to be more a backdrop for the rest of the room. I need a door and then a step down into the room, which is something I feel like there is in the movie. I'm not sure if there is a step down, but for some reason in my head there is. On the left outside area, there is a sign that says office. It's actually backwards in my reference. And then I'm adding in the furniture in red. FC stands for filing cabinet. You don't really see filing cabinets, but because I have them in the waiting room, I want to continue them over. I'm also marking in the size of the speaker box to make sure I have enough room for that. And then I'm using a pink highlighter to show where the drapes are going to go, just to remind myself what areas I need to make sure there is something behind the windows. Through the right side window, you're going to be able to see a relief that's being sculpted by another artist for my project. I'm really excited to see how it comes out. And then I'm just adding in some final details, like there were some pipes or wires that were on the wall. And I want to be sure to map out where my football players are going to stand because they are a big feature of this room. I want to make sure I don't add too much to where there's not room for them anymore. And I'm going to have Juno sitting in the chair. So that's about it for my floor plan. I think I have everything planned out, including the areas where I need to have some hidden secrets. I moved the base of my project over to my work table, and I was ready to get started on some structure. Now, I did think originally this was just going to be a planning video, but I'm so excited to start actually building this room that I just want to get going, and I know this will make the next video so much easier to have some walls started. I'm actually going to begin with the columns, which I'm making out of cardboard. Cardboard is a material that is so easy to bend and manipulate, so if I'm wanting to make something like wonky columns, this is the material I'm going to reach for. In order to make them bigger at the top and smaller at the bottom, I just created 4 lines that came together towards the bottom, and then once I scored the interior lines and forced it to bend and close on itself, I had a column that was a bit more Tim Burton-like in my opinion. He likes to have things that are like wider and heavier at the top and very thin at the bottom. I think it makes everything look very delicate or like it's about to topple over. I made 5 of these and they are all taller than they need to be for the space. I did that on purpose so I can cut them down to size. Instead of trying to measure out where each one of these needs to go, I used a nail and hammer to mark through the paper and make a hole in the base, just a very shallow hole, so that it was marked out and I knew exactly where the base of my column needed to hit. Once I removed the paper, I just used a pen and circled all of my nail holes because they were a little bit hard to see. But they were there, and this made this part of the process much easier. I could then mark out the exact height I needed for my column and then cut through with my X-Acto blade. Cardboard is really good at crunching, and so when I started to put this in place, I was okay with the top of the column crunching a little bit. This made it really strong and secure inside of the space. I did this for all 5 columns, and I just eyeballed how I wanted the top of the column to sit. I followed this same process for all 5 columns until I had something that I liked and was really starting to outline the space that's going to be Juno's office. And I did end up cutting a little larger than I thought I needed, and then I could always cut off more, but it's hard to add back cardboard if you cut off too much. So I just go really slow and try to be patient with this process. Once I liked how they were looking, I took a pencil and marked off the numbers. So I marked them 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and I put the number on the face of the column so I knew which direction it needed to face. And then I outlined where the column hit on the ceiling and where it hit on the floor so I could line them up exactly. None of these were glued in permanently, so I could remove them, reinforce the edges with hot glue because previously they were just held in place with one edge being glued, and then I covered all of the edges with masking tape. This is going to make for a smoother transition when I cover it with paper. I also had 2 columns that are against the back wall, and to allow for room for my wires and lighting to go by, I cut out a little dent in the back of columns 2 and 3. I'm going to be covering these with cardstock. This is going to leave my columns just a little bit lumpy, but in my reference they are lumpy, so I'm not having to worry about that too much, and I'm really excited about that. That's one good thing with the Netherworld. To start the process of gluing the cardstock to the cardboard, I'm adding a layer of wood glue and making it as flat as possible. I let it dry on one side of the column, and then I added more glue to the side and rolled it in the cardstock paper. And as I'm doing this, I'm just making sure the paper is as flush to the column as possible. I'm doing this on both sides, and when I get to the back, I'm going to cut off the excess paper and continue to glue. I'm going to do this for both sides, so the back of my column will have a seam of cardstock paper, but it really won't be seen, so I'm not worrying about it too much. The cardstock is longer than the column, so I'm just going to go around with my X-Acto and cut the excess paper off the top and the bottom. I am not being too cautious when it comes to cutting the paper. I'm not making sure that it's exactly lined up with the cardboard, because the cardboard is going to smush a little bit once I put it into my project, and I can always use some drywall compound to fill in any gaps if needed. Now that all the cardboard columns are covered and dried, I can add them in place. I am using wood glue. I know it looks like a tacky glue bottle, but I put wood glue in here, and I'm adding it to the top and bottom and then just forcing it into the space that I had previously outlined with pencil. Before I could add all of the columns in, I did need to make a hole from this room into the center of the base. As I said at the beginning of this video, there is a center square room where all of the wires run through, and so I need to make sure that I have this hole drilled first so that all my wiring for the speaker and the lights can go into this area. Once that's done, I can move on with my installation of the columns because I don't really have to worry about the lighting right now. I just needed to make sure there was space for the wires to connect when they need to. While the columns were really easy to create and install, this next part is not going to be so easy, and that's because I have to custom build walls that fit in between these columns. Because I just kind of put them wherever I felt like, well, the bases are matching with the floor plan, but the tops were at weird angles, I'm going to have to custom build each one of these walls in between the columns. I do want them to be removable because I have to build things behind the walls and I want to be able to get to them. So what I did is I made a bottom piece out of foam board, then I built a wood structure that's going to be the opening for the window, and then I cut another piece of foam board that fit for the top of the wall. Once I had everything fitting in between the columns, I could take the window out and reinforce it. Now the only way to reinforce this window, because it's so thin and all the pieces are thin, is I just have to go ahead and build the window slats that go within it. I'm adding 2 vertical pieces that you can see in the reference, and I'm gluing those on and using some dollhouse band-aids to make sure they are extra held in place. And then I'm using some mat board that I cut into thin lengths. These are going to be the slats that you see that are open in Juno's windows. And I'm just going to keep adding these until I have a completed wall segment, and these slats and the vertical pieces and the horizontal pieces, they all kind of work together to strengthen this window so that when I need to pull it in and out of the wall, I'm not worried about my little window structure coming apart. Because everything is at a weird angle, I have to be very careful about how I put these in and out of between the columns. But I'm going to do the same exact thing for the other 2 walls that have windows inside of them. It's just a tedious process of trying to fit it in, but it does work eventually. It just takes a little bit of patience. All of the walls that have windows are going to be removable, so eventually I will put magnets behind them to make sure that they snap in place, but the only reason they would be moved is if I need to get to the wiring behind it. Now I need to insert the door, which is going to be a permanent wall. I'm adding a wood dowel back there so I have something to glue the wall against to make sure that I have room to pass the wires for the lighting back there. I used some scrap cardboard to make sure I had the right size before I cut my foam board, which costs a lot more money if I mess it up. And then once I had the size wall that I liked, I cut a hole in it for the door, which I will build in a later video. I glued that wall in place first before moving on to the second wall. I made again another cardboard template before cutting it out of foam board, and thankfully this worked really well and I got a very tight fit for these two walls. There's going to be a painting on this wall and maybe a few wires and pipes, so I wanted to make sure I had a blank wall somewhere. Now I can add the furniture back in and really get a feel for Juno's office. I'm thinking if I have space, I might add Flat Stanley to the side over here to the left. He currently doesn't have a place in this project, and I think this area over here, if it works out, would be a good place for him. I'm going to show you a bit of my haul of things that I have on order or I've gotten in the past that I need for this space. One of them is the speaker I told you about. I had the speaker, but I had to use Tinkercad to create a 3D printed box. Now that I have it, in the next video, I'm going to be building it into the wall to make sure that there is a definite space for this speaker. The flooring in Juno's office seems to be metallic and it has a pattern on it. This is a vinyl that I found online that I thought was very similar, so I'm going to try and use this in another video to create her floor. Also, everything is gray, so I bought a large amount of gray paint to also use. This will keep me from having to remix it and try to match gray over and over. For the doll bodies, I had purchased Juno back when I got the dolls for the Netherworld. I just added her in as a Netherworld purchase. So I've had her for a while, but the football players I recently purchased from SAS Mini Dolls, and these are the 3 bodies that I have ready to create the football players with. I also had a patron who works on cakes suggest these little football helmets, and they would be absolutely perfect, except that my football players have ears and they would fit on their heads if they didn't have ears. So I'm probably going to use them as a template to help me make their helmets that are going to work. And then I also have this red fabric. It's just an old red t-shirt that I think is going to be good for their uniforms. I'm also going to go through my drawers and find a white t-shirt that we don't use anymore, just because I think the white t-shirt will be good for their pants. I need to just study their whole uniform. Before ending this planning video, I wanted to go over my plans for what videos I'm going to create. I think I either have 1 or 2 more videos over building the office itself, and I'm also going to have to make the scenes that are outside of the windows. I'm going to do a video over Juno's furniture, which is going to be custom designed and built. And then I'm also going to be creating the filing cabinet and some of the office accessories, including stacks and stacks of paper. I'll probably make 1 video over the creation of the football players, since that is 3 total dolls, but hopefully it'll go kind of quick because they all have the same outfit. And then finally, I need to create Juno herself and possibly in the same video work on the lights for her space, but I'm not quite sure. That may have to be its own video depending on what we end up doing. So that's all I have for you today in the first video of Beetlegust 2024. I showed you the overview of the project thus far so you can see what has already been done. And then we started the planning process for Juno's office. And was also able to get up a few walls, which I think is going to be a great start for the next video, which I'm going to start right after this video ends. I hope you enjoyed it. Please let me know if you have any thoughts, ideas, comments down below in the comments section. I love to read through them, and oftentimes I find new ideas that I would not have thought of in a million years. I hope you all have a fantastic week, and happy Beetlegust. Bye. Tag sticking out here the whole time. Teach me to dress up for a video. Can you push it out?
I can't, no.
Okay, I believe you.
When in doubt, use a big stick.
that's enough of me singing and dancing.